Today, IT organizations are under more pressure than ever to do more with less. They need to optimize spend, right size resources, and prove the value of every dollar that they invest. When we think about IT optimization, it's not just about cutting costs, it's about eliminating inefficiency and reallocating resources to higher value activities and making smarter decisions with better data. So today, in the Proven Optics solution, we're going to walk through our goals and outcomes and how the system can help eliminate spreadsheets, automate CFO reporting, help with mid-year budget cuts and priority shifts, rationalize your application portfolio, and ultimately do show back to the business to right-size their usage and consumption. So let's get into how the application supports this. Right from the get-go, eliminating spreadsheets. Everything in Proven Optics and ServiceNow lives in one place. There's no more chasing versions and dealing with version control or chasing after emails when it comes to planning and costing activities. Now, today, 80% of organizations are still using spreadsheets to do planning and costing activities. Our approach, contrary to this traditional budgeting approach, centralizes the process of formulation and execution and forecasting by bringing stakeholders into a centralized system versus sending out a template to those stakeholders. This process alone, by putting that and shifting that on its head, will speed up your process of budgeting 60% faster, is what most of our clients are seeing today. So bringing them into familiar interfaces like spreadsheet look and feel to spike user adoption and the learning curve, shorten that learning curve, and using validated fields for better data accuracy and reporting can help eliminate spreadsheets right off the bat. Second objective, automate CFO reporting. Once all this information gets into the system, where does it ultimately land? You have real-time visibility into your budget, your actuals, your forecast, and your variance at any given point throughout the year. You can trend that over time to see where there's outliers. And as you scroll down, you can see how we can start to slice and dice this data by cost center, by strategy, understanding what we're spending from a strategy perspective. We can prioritize those dollars. We can split them out by service, by project, by vendor. You can visualize this information in 30 different ways. You can also export any of this information to Excel to suffice any CFO requirement that you might have. The third use case is budget cuts. If budgets or priorities shift mid-year, how can you quickly reallocate or cut spend in a data-driven way? The very first way to do that is through a best practice forecasting approach. Getting out in front of overrun or potential underburn and implementing cost controls accordingly. So in this chart, we can see that we are going to overrun starting in September based on our budget, right? How does this information get into the system? Well, again, centralized approach from something like a portal where we could bring in those business stakeholders that are closest to these projects and actually give them a view of here's what you ultimately budgeted. Here's all of your actuals to date. You can't change these. We can't go back. And give me where you feel you're going to land in the future. Right now, there's intelligent ways and algorithms we can run in the background to help support this forecasting and the prediction of the future. But ultimately, again, getting people in the system to give you then actionable outputs as to where you should be focusing on implementing cost controls is extremely helpful. The faster that happens, the more time you have to ultimately react. Now, there's also ways that we can show you in the application where there are expense reduction opportunities. And you can drill in and see which spend lines or expense lines these are coming from. Typically, this is done through a matrix approach of impact, so understanding what the impact of this dollar to the business is, and influence to actually change that spend. This is how you can make intelligent trade-offs when priorities or budgets are cut or shift mid-year, or you're asked to do more with less. Low influence means you can't change these things. High influence are areas that you want to drill into because this might be areas that are one-time ads or refresh projects that have been both seen as low impact to the business and you actually have influence to make a change on those dollars. So the app will direct you to help find where you can make shifts or budget transfers throughout the year or going into a new budget year. Number 4 is app rationalization. So how do we retire what's not adding value, and how does the system show you ultimately where to look? Well, the first understanding of that is understanding the total cost of ownership and the cost drivers to any application or service. The application can certainly support that analysis, show you what your number one spend on apps is, or largest spend on applications are, in this case, SAP Financials, and what's ultimately driving the cost to your app portfolio. In addition to that, we can see where your app portfolio is being consumed. So what value is it delivering across the business at different business units, locations, services, etc. And you can do unit cost analysis of these applications. So you can start to understand if the consumption or the total cost is out of whack, causing a higher unit cost. Now, if you had a question about any of those individual applications, like SAP Financials, you could drill down individually and see exactly what's driving the cost in the anatomy of the cost of a specific application, just like you can see, again, what value it's supporting to the rest of the business here. So one great way to start to understand price metrics in proven optics. But ultimately, when it comes to app rationalization, it's more than understanding the unit cost and the total cost. You need to understand that stacked against performance and stacked against risk. So looking at other metadata from your application stack that might be in the platform today or coming from other sources, like stacking cost against application age, stacking cost against install type, right? These are other areas that we can start to bring together to give you full context for making a good app rationalization decision. We can also push this data to APM. If you're using APM today, you can do the same thing here. We can actually show you where we want to retire, sustain, or migrate applications based on some performance and risk metric, as well as price metric coming in from proven optics. So all sorts of analysis where the system can actually help you find areas to, in this example, retire an application. Lastly, right-size consumption. How do we drive efficiency by helping business units see and manage their own IT usage? That really comes back to the showback reports. So what we call the bill of IT. This is how we're able to, by department, show an individual what services they are consuming, how much of that service, and how they are being costed, right? So in lieu of just sending out a bill and showing them a total cost that they owe, it's very important and a best practice to show the cost transparency back to the business unit so they understand how their consumption behavior actually is driving their cost. In this example, my ticket count, my head count. Business units typically treat IT like it's a free resource until they see reports like this and understand why and how their cost is contributing to the cost of the organization. They typically aren't going to make a behavioral change. They might hold on to those additional devices or licenses if they don't understand what is ultimately driving the cost for certain applications or services or hardware, right? So this report ultimately helps show back to the business where individuals are consuming and potentially how they can change that if we're trying to optimize our IT spend. Another great way to show this back to the business is through the diagram analysis in the application, where I can actually track how dollars flow throughout the business and validate any allocation understanding that I have for my customer or service. A lot of the times as IT finance professionals, we get asked the question, why does something cost so much? This is a great visual where you can actually go in and show teams exactly how cost is allocated throughout the business. So in this case, my Jira application, I've got 2 allocations coming in that are driving its cost, and I have 4 allocations going out that ultimately are systems or business units that this application is supporting and will make up a larger cost as we go up to the business unit ultimately, right? So having that diagram and that visual to explain to the business can be very helpful in this showback analysis. So with that, today you saw a sneak peek of how Proven Optics can help with IT optimization, combining budget forecasting and some of that cost transparency concepts to give you a complete picture of where your IT dollars are going, and more importantly, where they should be going and who they're supporting. Thank you.